Megan Taylor hurried through the sterile corridors of Riverview Memorial Hospital, her auburn hair falling loose from its once neat bun. The antiseptic smell of the hospital invaded her nostrils as she clutched a bouquet of sunflowers, her best friend Diane's favorite. Room 412, that's what the receptionist had said. Megan had been in meetings all day and had missed the visiting hours rush. Now at 8:30 p.m., the hospital hallways were eerily quiet, except for the occasional squeak of nurses' shoes and the distant beeping of monitors. She counted the room numbers as she walked. 408, 410, 412. The door was slightly ajar, and Megan gently pushed it open, expecting to see Diane recovering from her appendectomy. Instead, the room was dimly lit with just a single lamp casting a warm glow over a man lying in the hospital bed. He wasn't Diane. Megan froze, realizing her mistake. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, backing toward the door. "Wrong room." The man's eyes fluttered open, and they were the most striking shade of blue she'd ever seen. Despite the pallor of his skin and the IV tube snaking from his arm, there was something commanding about his presence. "I've waited for you," he whispered, his voice raspy but strong. Megan's hand stopped on the doorknob. "Excuse me?" He smiled weakly. "The nurse said someone would bring my dinner 30 minutes ago. I'm starving." Relief washed over Megan. "Oh, I'm not hospital staff. I'm visiting a friend, but I got the wrong room. Sorry to disturb you." As she turned to leave, the man attempted to sit up, wincing with effort. "Wait, since you're here, would you mind passing me that water? The call button is out of reach." Megan hesitated but then stepped forward, placing the sunflowers on a nearby chair. She handed him the water glass from the bedside table, noticing the expensive watch on his wrist and the MacBook perched on the rolling table. "Thank you," he said after taking a sip. "I'm Jackson Bennett." The name struck a chord in Megan's memory. Jackson Bennett, the CEO of Innovate Technologies, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. His face had been on the cover of Business Weekly just last month. "You're Jackson Bennett? The Jackson Bennett?" Megan blurted out before she could stop herself. A smile played at the corner of his mouth. "Last time I checked. And you are?" "Megan Taylor. I work at Carson & Associates, the marketing firm." "Carson & Associates," he repeated thoughtfully. "We've considered hiring them for our new product launch." An awkward silence fell between them. Megan shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "Well, I should go find my friend." "Room 421, not 412, she said, mentally kicking herself for the mix-up. "Before you go, Megan Taylor from Carson & Associates, would you humor a bedridden CEO for a moment?" His expression was both challenging and vulnerable, a combination Megan found strangely compelling. Against her better judgment, she sat down in the visitor's chair. "What happened to you?" she asked, gesturing to his bandaged chest visible beneath the hospital gown. "Car accident. 3 days ago." "Broken ribs, punctured lung, concussion, the works. Makes for a great story at the next board meeting." His attempt at humor was undermined by the grimace that followed. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Don't be. It was my fault. Working while driving. The irony is I was on my way to a meeting about our company's wellness initiative." He laughed, then immediately regretted it, clutching his side. Megan found herself smiling despite the situation. There was something disarming about Jackson, a stark contrast to the cutthroat CEO persona portrayed in the media. "So who's the lucky friend getting these?" Jackson nodded toward the sunflowers. "My best friend Diane. Appendicitis. Nothing serious, but I promised I'd visit." "Then you should go. She's waiting for you." His eyes met hers, and for a split second, Megan felt something pass between them, a connection, fleeting but undeniable. As she stood to leave, Jackson spoke again. "It was nice meeting you, Megan Taylor, even if it was a case of mistaken room identity." Megan retrieved her flowers, an impulsive thought forming. She separated 2 sunflowers from the bouquet and placed them in the empty vase on his bedside table. "For your wellness initiative," she said with a smile. "Get better soon, Mr. Bennett." As she closed the door behind her, Megan couldn't shake the strange feeling that this accidental meeting was somehow significant. She found room 421 and spent the next hour chatting with Diane, but her mind kept wandering back to room 412 and the blue-eyed CEO who had whispered, "I've waited for you." The next morning, Megan arrived at Carson & Associates to find her boss, Nathan, pacing the conference room. "There you are, emergency meeting. Our biggest pitch of the year just got moved up. Innovate Technologies wants to see our presentation this Friday instead of next month. Megan nearly dropped her coffee. Innovate Technologies? Jackson Bennett's company? Yes, and we need all hands on deck. This account could transform our firm. As her colleagues filed into the room, Megan's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Sunflowers brighten up a hospital room considerably. Thanks for the wellness tip. Dinner to discuss Carson & Associates' pitch. I promise not to be in a hospital gown this time. JB. Megan stared at her phone, her heart racing. How had he gotten her number? And more importantly, wasn't this a conflict of interest? Yet as Nathan began outlining their strategy for winning Innovate Technologies business, Megan couldn't help but wonder if her accidental wrong turn last night had been fate after all. Megan's thumb hovered over her phone screen, her mind racing through the professional implications of replying to Jackson's text. She was a senior account manager at Carson & Associates, not the most influential position, but certainly one that would raise eyebrows if she were discovered having dinner with a potential client, especially a client as high profile as Jackson Bennett. Megan, are you even listening? Nathan's voice cut through her thoughts. The conference room had emptied, leaving just the two of them. Sorry, I was just thinking about the pitch, she said, quickly pocketing her phone. Nathan sighed, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. This is the biggest opportunity we've had in years. Carson & Associates needs this account, especially after losing the Meridian project last quarter. Guilt gnawed at Megan. The Meridian project had been her responsibility, and despite her best efforts, the client had chosen their competitor. Another failure could damage her career irreparably. I understand. I'll start revising the presentation today, she promised. Back at her desk, Megan pulled up the preliminary pitch they had prepared for Innovate Technologies. It was good, but not great. Certainly not good enough to impress a visionary like Jackson Bennett. As she scrolled through the slides, her phone buzzed again. No pressure on the dinner. Just thought it might be helpful for both of us. I could give you insights on what Innovate is really looking for. JB. Megan bit her lip. Put that way, it almost sounded like a professional courtesy. Before she could overthink it, she typed a reply. Dinner could work. But to be clear, this is about providing your company with the best marketing strategy, nothing more. How's Thursday at 7? MT. His response came almost immediately. Understood. I'll send a car, nothing fancy, just a quiet place where we can talk business. Megan spent the next 2 days immersed in research, learning everything she could about Innovate Technologies and their upcoming product launch. A revolutionary smart home system that promised to be more intuitive and privacy-focused than anything on the market. By Thursday afternoon, she had completely overhauled Carson's original pitch, incorporating insights from industry reports and consumer trends. You look nice, commented Harriet, her office neighbor, as Megan touched up her lipstick. Hot date? Business dinner, Megan corrected, smoothing down her navy blue dress, professional yet flattering. With a potential client. Harriet raised an eyebrow. Must be important if you're breaking out the good pearls. At precisely 7 p.m., Megan stepped outside the office building to find a sleek black car waiting. The driver opened the door, revealing Jackson Bennett in the back seat, looking remarkably recovered. Gone was the hospital pallor, replaced by a healthy glow. He wore a casual but expensive-looking charcoal sweater that made his blue eyes even more striking. You look well for someone who was hospitalized less than a week ago, Megan remarked as she slid into the seat beside him. Excellent medical care and stubborn determination, he replied with a smile. Though my doctor wasn't thrilled about me checking out early. The car took them to a small, elegant restaurant tucked away in a historic building downtown. It was the kind of place that didn't have prices on the menu and served wine in crystal glasses. Despite the upscale setting, there was an intimacy to the space that made conversation easy. So, Mr. Bennett. Jackson, please. Mr. Bennett makes me sound like my father. Jackson, Megan corrected herself. You mentioned giving me insights about what Innovate Technologies is looking for. I'm all ears. Jackson studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. First, I want to know more about you, Megan Taylor. How did you end up at Carson & Associates? That's not relevant to your marketing needs, she pointed out. Humor me. I like to know who I'm working with. Megan took a sip of her water, weighing her options. Fine. I graduated from Northwestern with a degree in marketing and communications, worked at 2 smaller agencies before landing at Carson 5 years ago. I've led campaigns for Westridge department stores, Altitude Airlines, and most recently, I lost the Meridian project to our competitors. Honesty, I appreciate that, Jackson said. Most people would have left out that last part. I believe in transparency. Now about those insights, Jackson leaned forward. The truth is, Innovate's board is pushing me to go with Apex Marketing. They have a bigger name, more resources, but I've seen their work, and it's all flash, no substance. So why consider them a tool? Corporate politics. My board chair, Victor Harrington, plays golf with Apex's CEO. Jackson's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Victor and I have differing visions for the company's future. And where do we fit in? Carson is smaller than Apex with fewer resources, but more creativity, more hunger. I've seen your work for Altitude. Turning a budget airline into a lifestyle brand was genius. Megan couldn't help feeling flattered. That campaign had been her brainchild, a risky strategy that had paid off magnificently. Tell me about your new product, she said, steering the conversation back to business. Jackson's eyes lit up as he described HomeSync, their smart home system. Unlike its competitors, HomeSync processed all data locally rather than in the cloud, addressing privacy concerns that had plagued similar products. It was elegant, intuitive, and according to Jackson would revolutionize how people interacted with their homes. As they talked, Megan found herself genuinely engaged, her marketing mind already formulating strategies. Jackson was different here, away from the hospital and the corporate world. Passionate, articulate, even funny in a dry, self-deprecating way. She caught herself laughing more than once at his anecdotes about startup culture. "You're not what I expected," she admitted after they had finished their main course. "What did you expect? The ruthless CEO from the business magazines?" "Something like that. The media portrays you as a cold-blooded shark who built Innovate by stepping on others." "Yeah, I've read those articles." There was a hint of bitterness in his voice. "Is it true?" Megan asked boldly. "Did you force out your co-founder, Peter Walsh?" Jackson's expression darkened. "You've done your research." "But no, the media got that wrong. Peter and I had different visions. The split was mutual, though not without pain. He was my best friend since college." The vulnerability in his admission caught Megan off guard. For a brief moment, she saw past the CEO facade to the man beneath, a man who carried regrets despite his success. Their desserts arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. As they ate, Jackson's phone rang. He glanced at it, frowned, and declined the call. "Everything okay?" Megan asked. "Victor, probably calling about the Apex decision again." He sighed. "The board meeting tomorrow is going to be challenging." "Before the pitch on Friday?" Jackson nodded. "If Victor gets his way, your pitch might be a formality. He's pushing hard for Apex." Megan felt a flash of indignation. "So this dinner was what? A consolation prize? A nice gesture before you award the contract to someone else?" "No," Jackson said firmly, reaching across the table to touch her hand. The contact sent an unexpected warmth through her. "This dinner was me trying to find an ally, someone who understands what Innovate really needs, not what Victor thinks it needs." "And what does Innovate need?" Jackson's blue eyes held hers steadily. "A fresh perspective, authenticity, someone who sees the vision, not just the bottom line." He paused. "Someone like you, Megan." As they drove back to her apartment, Megan's mind was spinning with conflicting thoughts. Jackson had given her invaluable insights for the pitch, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more at play, both professionally and personally. The way he had looked at her, the lingering touch on her hand. "Thank you for tonight," Jackson said as the car pulled up to her building. "You've given me a lot to think about." "Likewise," Megan replied. "I hope your board meeting goes well tomorrow." "It won't," he said with a rueful smile. "But Friday might surprise us all." As Megan watched the car drive away, her phone buzzed with a text from Diane. "How was the secret dinner with the CEO? Spill everything." Megan shook her head, wondering how she was going to explain that what had started as a professional courtesy had somehow become much more complicated. One thing was certain: tomorrow's pitch preparation had just become the most important project of her career. Friday morning arrived with a torrential downpour, matching Megan's turbulent mood. She had barely slept, spending most of the night refining the presentation based on Jackson's insights. By the time she arrived at Carson & Associates, Carrying both her umbrella and a tray of premium coffee for the team, her nerves were stretched thin. "You look terrible," Harriet remarked as Megan set down the coffees in the conference room. "Thanks for the vote of confidence," Megan replied dryly, checking her reflection in her compact mirror. The dark circles under her eyes were partially concealed by makeup, but nothing could hide the nervous energy radiating from her. Nathan burst into the room, his usual composed demeanor replaced by barely contained panic. "We have a problem," he announced to the assembled team. "Innovate Technologies just called. The meeting has been moved up to 11 a.m. instead of 2 p.m., and they want it at their headquarters downtown." Megan's stomach dropped. "That's less than 2 hours from now, and it gets worse," Nathan continued, lowering his voice. "My contact says the board chair, Victor Harrington, will be sitting in on the presentation. Apparently, he's pushing hard for them to go with Apex Marketing." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Everyone knew what was at stake. Not just the prestigious account, but potentially the future of Carson and Associates itself. "We'll be ready," Megan said with more confidence than she felt, avoiding Nathan's questioning gaze. She hadn't told anyone about her dinner with Jackson, and now wasn't the time. The team scrambled to finalize their materials, and at 10:30 a.m., they piled into taxis heading for the gleaming Innovate Technologies headquarters in the heart of the financial district. Rain lashed against the windows as Megan mentally rehearsed her talking points, trying to ignore the gnawing anxiety in her stomach. The Innovate building was a marvel of modern architecture, all glass and steel with an open atrium that soared 20 stories high. As the Carson team was escorted to the executive floor, Megan couldn't help but feel intimidated by the sheer success that surrounded them. They were shown into a sleek boardroom where several Innovate executives were already seated. Jackson sat at the head of the table, looking every inch the powerful CEO in a perfectly tailored suit. If he recognized Megan, he gave no indication, his expression neutral as Nathan made introductions. Victor Harrington sat to Jackson's right, a silver-haired man with cold eyes and an expensive watch that he checked repeatedly, making it clear their presentation was an inconvenience in his busy schedule. "Let's get started," Victor said curtly before Jackson could speak. "We have another presentation from Apex Marketing at 1 p.m., so please be concise." Megan felt her cheeks flush with indignation, but kept her professional smile firmly in place as Nathan began their opening remarks. When it was her turn to present, she stepped forward, making deliberate eye contact with each person in the room, including Jackson, whose gaze betrayed nothing. "While my colleagues have outlined our proposed marketing strategy," Megan began, "I'd like to address why Carson and Associates is uniquely positioned to represent HomeSync. This isn't just another smart home system. It's a revolution in how technology integrates with daily life, with privacy at its core." She launched into the presentation she had stayed up all night perfecting, emphasizing the aspects Jackson had been most passionate about during their dinner conversation. As she spoke, she noticed a subtle shift in the room. Executives who had been checking emails were now paying attention, and even Victor had stopped glancing at his watch. "The challenge isn't explaining what HomeSync does," she continued. "It's conveying how it feels to use it. The peace of mind knowing your data stays in your home, the intuitive interface that anticipates needs without being intrusive. Our campaign will focus on emotional connection, not just technical specifications." Jackson leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving her face. She couldn't read his expression, but she felt a surge of confidence nonetheless. Just as Megan was reaching the climax of her presentation, the boardroom door opened and a familiar face appeared, one that made her blood run cold. Peter Walsh, Jackson's former co-founder and supposed friend-turned-rival, strode into the room with the confidence of someone who belonged there. "Sorry I'm late," Peter announced, taking a seat next to Victor. "Traffic was a nightmare." The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees as Jackson and Peter locked eyes. The tension between them was palpable, a living thing that sucked the oxygen from the room. "Mr. Walsh is joining us as a consultant on this project," Victor explained smoothly, his smile not reaching his eyes, given his expertise in consumer technology. Megan faltered for a moment, thrown by this unexpected development. She glanced at Jackson, whose jaw was clenched so tightly she feared it might crack. She had researched Peter Walsh extensively during her preparation, the co-founder who had amicably parted ways with Innovate 3 years ago, only to launch a moderately successful competing company. "Please continue, Ms. Taylor," Jackson said, his voice controlled, but with an undercurrent of anger that wasn't directed at her. Megan took a deep breath and found her place again, but the dynamic in the room had shifted. Peter watched her with calculated interest, occasionally whispering something to Victor that made the older man nod in agreement. When she finished, the questions began. Probing, sometimes hostile inquiries that seemed designed to undermine Carson's proposal. Victor led the charge, with Peter adding pointed questions about market positioning and competitor analysis. Then Peter leaned forward. "Your privacy-focused approach is interesting, Ms. Taylor, but our research suggests consumers care more about convenience than privacy. How would you address that disconnect?" Before Megan could answer, Jackson interjected. "That's actually not what our latest consumer research shows, Peter. Privacy concerns have increased 47% among our target demographic in the past year alone." "With all due respect, Jackson," Victor said with a condescending smile, "Peter's expertise in consumer behavior is why I invited him here today. Apex Marketing's preliminary proposal aligns with his assessment." The implication was clear. Victor had already made his decision, and this presentation was merely a formality. Megan felt a surge of anger on behalf of both Carson and Associates and Jackson himself, who was being undermined in his own boardroom. "If I may," Megan said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "our research shows that while consumers may not explicitly prioritize privacy in surveys, their behavior tells a different story. The recent exodus from platforms with questionable data practices demonstrates that trust is the new currency in technology adoption." She pulled up a slide she had added at the last minute, a graph showing the correlation between privacy concerns and brand loyalty across different demographics. "This isn't just about marketing HomeSync's features," she continued. "It's about positioning Innovate Technologies as a company that respects its users enough to put their privacy first. That's not just good ethics, it's good business." The room fell silent. Peter's smug expression faltered slightly, while Victor looked annoyed at having his narrative challenged. Jackson, on the other hand, had the ghost of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Thank you, Carson and Associates," Victor said abruptly, standing to signal the end of the meeting. "We'll be in touch after we've heard from Apex and made our decision." As the team gathered their materials, Megan caught Jackson's eye briefly. He gave her a nearly imperceptible nod that somehow conveyed both approval and warning. In the elevator heading down, Nathan turned to Megan. "Where did that privacy angle come from?" "It wasn't in our original proposal." "Additional research," she said vaguely, avoiding his questioning gaze. Nathan studied her for a moment longer. "Well, whatever inspired it, you were brilliant in there. But I'm not sure it's enough to overcome the obvious bias toward Apex." Back at the office, the team dissected the presentation, analyzing every reaction and comment. Megan participated half-heartedly, her mind preoccupied with the unexpected appearance of Peter Walsh and the obvious tension between him and Jackson. What had really happened between them, and why was Victor so determined to undermine Jackson's authority? As evening fell, most of the team had gone home, leaving Megan alone with her thoughts and a mountain of follow-up work. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. "Need to talk. Important developments. Meet me at Parkside Cafe in 30 minutes, JB." Megan hesitated. Professional boundaries were already blurred, and meeting Jackson again would only complicate things further. But curiosity and concern won out. She texted back a simple "I'll be there" and gathered her things. The Parkside Cafe was a small, dimly lit establishment tucked away from the main streets. When Megan arrived, she spotted Jackson in a corner booth, nursing what appeared to be whiskey. He looked different than he had in the boardroom, tired, frustrated, almost vulnerable. "What happened after we left?" Megan asked, sliding into the booth across from him. Jackson took a sip of his drink before answering. "Victor happened. He's making his move." "His move?" "To push me out," Jackson said bluntly. "He's been planning it for months. Bringing in Peter was just the latest maneuver." Megan's eyes widened. "Can he do that? You're the founder, the CEO. I own 42% of the company. Victor and his allies control 35%. The remaining shares are spread among smaller investors who typically follow Victor's lead." Jackson's voice was bitter. "The board meeting yesterday was contentious. They're questioning my leadership, my vision for HomeSync." Because you want to focus on privacy rather than monetizing user data, Megan guessed, the pieces falling into place. Jackson nodded. Victor sees dollar signs in user data. I see betrayal of consumer trust. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. But that's not why I asked you here. Victor is planning to announce Apex as Innovate's marketing partner on Monday, regardless of your presentation. Megan felt her heart sink. So it was all for nothing? Not necessarily. Jackson's blue eyes held a determination that hadn't been there moments before. Your presentation today changed some minds on the executive team, and I have a plan, but I need your help, and it's asking a lot. As he outlined his idea, Megan's eyes grew wider. It was risky, potentially career-ending if it failed, but if it succeeded, "Are you in?" Jackson asked when he finished explaining. Megan took a deep breath, knowing her answer could change everything. Her career, Carson & Associates, and perhaps even the future of Innovate Technologies itself. "I'm in," she said, her voice stronger than she expected. "What do we do first?" The weekend passed in a blur of planning and preparation. Megan barely left her apartment, surrounded by notes, market research, and half-empty coffee cups. Her normally tidy living room had transformed into a war room for what Jackson had dubbed Operation Integrity. On Sunday evening, she caught a glimpse of herself in the bathroom mirror. Her slender frame looked more fragile than usual. Her green eyes were tired, but determined beneath her auburn hair, which had lost its usual luster after 2 days of neglect. At 5'6", Megan had always carried herself with confidence that made her seem taller, a quality that had served her well in the male-dominated boardrooms of her career. "You look like you need sleep," she muttered to her reflection, splashing cold water on her face. Sleep would have to wait. Tomorrow could change everything. Monday morning arrived with pristine blue skies, a stark contrast to Friday's downpour. Megan dressed with deliberate care, choosing a forest green dress that complemented her eyes and brought warmth to her fair skin. She applied her makeup meticulously, ensuring the freckles scattered across her nose and cheeks were visible, a feature she had once tried to hide but now embraced as distinctive. When she arrived at Carson & Associates, Nathan intercepted her before she could reach her office. "Innovate Technologies called," he said, his expression grim. "They're announcing their marketing partner at a press conference at 2 p.m. today." Megan feigned surprise. "That's fast. Did they say anything else?" "Just that they appreciated our proposal, but would be going in a different direction." Nathan sighed, defeat evident in his posture. "I'm sorry, Megan, I know how hard you worked on this." "The day's not over yet," she said, with a mysterious smile that left Nathan looking confused. At precisely 1 p.m., Megan's phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. "Boardroom secured, you ready?" She responded with a simple thumbs-up emoji and grabbed her laptop and the presentation materials she had prepared over the weekend. "I need to step out for a bit," she told Harriet, who raised an eyebrow but didn't question her. Innovate's headquarters was buzzing with activity when Megan arrived. The atrium had been transformed with banners announcing the home sync launch, and tech journalists milled about, waiting for the press conference. Megan slipped past them to the executive elevator, where Jackson's assistant was waiting with a security badge. "He's gathered everyone in the main boardroom," the assistant whispered as they rode up. "Victor thinks it's a final review before the announcement." The boardroom was packed with Innovate executives when Megan entered. Victor Harrington stood at the front alongside Peter Walsh, both looking smug. Jackson sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Taylor," Victor said coldly, "this is a private meeting. I don't recall inviting Carson & Associates." "I invited her," Jackson said, standing. His presence seemed to fill the room as he moved to the front, gesturing for Megan to join him. "Before we head downstairs to announce our marketing partnership, there's something the board needs to see." Victor's face darkened. "We've already made our decision, Jackson. Apex Marketing will handle the home sync launch." "A decision based on incomplete information," Jackson countered smoothly. "Ms. Taylor has uncovered some relevant data that might interest the board." Megan connected her laptop to the presentation system, heart hammering against her ribs. This was the moment of truth. "While preparing Carson's proposal," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves, "I conducted standard competitive analysis on all major marketing firms, including Apex. What I found was concerning." She brought up the first slide, financial records showing unusual transactions between a shell company and Apex Marketing over the past 6 months. This shell company, Harrington Global Ventures, has paid Apex over $2 million since January. The same shell company that, according to public records, is owned by Victor Harrington's son-in-law. The room erupted in murmurs as Victor's face turned an alarming shade of red. "This is preposterous," he sputtered. "I don't know what you think you're implying." "I'm not implying anything," Megan continued calmly, advancing to the next slide. "I'm stating facts. Apex Marketing has been developing HomeSync's competitor product for the past year while negotiating to represent HomeSync." She played a video clip from a private investor meeting where Apex's CEO discussed their partnership with a leading technology firm to launch a smart home system with features suspiciously similar to HomeSync. "They've been gathering inside information on HomeSync to help their other client beat it to market," Jackson explained, his voice tight with controlled anger, "and Victor has been feeding them that information." Peter Walsh shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding eye contact with everyone. "You knew about this too, didn't you, Peter?" Jackson asked, turning to his former friend. "That's why you were so eager to consult on this project, not to help innovate, but to gather more intelligence for your own company." The unnamed partner in Apex's presentation. Peter's silence was damning. "This is a baseless witch hunt," Victor declared, but his usual confidence had evaporated. Several board members were already huddled together, whispering urgently. "There's more," Megan said, bringing up emails between Victor, Peter, and Apex executives discussing HomeSync's proprietary technology. Emails that had been obtained through completely legal means, as Jackson had authorized a company-wide security audit that had flagged the communications. By the time she finished her presentation, the atmosphere in the room had shifted dramatically. Victor and Peter sat in stony silence, while the board members conferred in hushed voices. The most senior board member, Dorothy Williams, finally spoke. "In light of this information, I move that we delay the press announcement and convene an emergency closed board session. I also move that Victor Harrington be temporarily removed from his duties as board chair pending investigation." The motion passed with overwhelming support, leaving Victor sputtering threats about lawsuits as he was escorted from the room. Peter slipped out quietly in the confusion, his dreams of undermining HomeSync thoroughly dashed. As the boardroom cleared, Jackson turned to Megan, relief and gratitude evident in his eyes. "You were incredible." "We make a good team," she replied, finally allowing herself to breathe normally again. "We need to address the press waiting downstairs," Jackson said. "Care to join me? What are you going to tell them?" "That the HomeSync launch is proceeding as planned, but with a slight delay in announcing our marketing partner." His eyes held a question. "That is, if Carson and Associates is still interested in the contract." Megan laughed, the tension of the past hour dissolving. "I think Nathan might have a heart attack if I told him we turned it down." Downstairs, Jackson handled the press with the practiced ease of a seasoned CEO, announcing a short delay in naming their marketing partner due to additional vetting procedures. Journalists peppered him with questions, but he deflected them masterfully, his hand occasionally brushing against Megan's back as they stood side by side. The following week was a whirlwind. Carson and Associates officially secured the Innovate Technologies account, the largest in the firm's history. Nathan was ecstatic, promising Megan a substantial bonus and promotion. The board investigation confirmed Victor's betrayal, resulting in his resignation and a complete restructuring of Innovate's leadership, with Jackson emerging stronger than ever. 3 months later, the HomeSync launch exceeded all expectations. The privacy-focused marketing campaign resonated deeply with consumers, and pre-orders broke industry records. Carson and Associates' reputation soared, with Megan becoming something of a legend in marketing circles. On the evening after the successful launch event, Megan found herself once again in a quiet corner of the Parkside Cafe with Jackson. The small table between them held a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. "To success," Jackson said, raising his glass. "To integrity," Megan countered with a smile. As they clinked glasses, Jackson's expression grew serious. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you." "Sounds ominous," Megan teased, though her heart skipped a beat. "Remember when we first met? In the hospital? When I walked into the wrong room, hard to forget." Jackson's blue eyes held hers. It wasn't entirely a coincidence. I recognized your name when the receptionist mentioned you were visiting someone on my floor. I knew you worked at Carson and Associates. Your firm was already on our shortlist. So you had your assistant send me to the wrong room? Megan asked, surprised. No, that was genuine chance, but when you appeared in my doorway, I saw an opportunity. His smile was both sheepish and charming. When I said I've waited for you, I meant it in more ways than one. I'd been looking for someone who could understand what Innovate needed, someone with integrity and vision. So you orchestrated our dinner? The pitch, all of it? There was no accusation in her voice, only curiosity. I orchestrated the opportunity. You did the rest. Jackson reached across the table to take her hand. But somewhere along the way, it became about more than just business for me. Megan felt warmth spread through her at his touch. The chemistry between them had been undeniable from the start, but professional boundaries and the chaos of the past months had kept them focused on business. What about now? She asked softly. The launch is successful. Victor is gone. Carson has the account. What happens next? That depends, Jackson said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Innovate is opening a new creative campus upstate next month. I'll be relocating there to focus on our next generation of products. Sounds exciting, Megan said, trying to ignore the pang of disappointment at the thought of him leaving the city. It would be more exciting with the right marketing partner, he continued. I've already spoken with Nathan about establishing a Carson satellite office at the campus, with you heading it up, if you're interested. Megan's eyes widened. A satellite office? That's a big opportunity. Professionally, yes, but I'm hoping it might be a personal opportunity too. Jackson's gaze was both vulnerable and hopeful. These past months working with you have been the best of my career. I'd like to see what else we might build together, beyond business. Megan felt a smile spreading across her face. 6 months ago, she had been frustrated with her career trajectory, worried about the Meridian failure, and walking into the wrong hospital room. Now, she was being offered a chance to reshape her professional future and explore a connection that had been simmering beneath the surface since that first whispered, "I've waited for you." I think, she said, squeezing his hand, that wrong turns sometimes lead exactly where we're meant to be. As Jackson leaned across the table to kiss her, Megan knew that their story was just beginning. The hospital mix-up that had seemed like a simple mistake had set in motion a series of events that transformed both their lives. Sometimes, Megan reflected as she returned his kiss, the most meaningful journeys start with walking through the wrong door.